When someone can't face you anymore, it feels like being erased while you're still breathing. It feels like you're standing in the same room, but they're acting like you're invisible, like your voice is a noise they can't tolerate, like your presence is a mirror they refuse to look into. And I know what your mind does next. It starts blaming you. It starts searching for a mistake that explains their distance. It starts replaying every message, every tone, every pause, every moment you showed emotion. And it whispers, maybe I was too much. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I asked for more than I deserved. Listen to me. Stop turning their avoidance into your shame. Because a person who can't face you is not always a person who doesn't care. Sometimes it's a person who cares, but not in a healthy way, not in a grown way, not in a way that can build love. Sometimes it's a person who is terrified of what they will feel the moment they look you in the eyes. The moment they face you, they don't just face your pain, they face their choices. They face what they promised and didn't protect. They face the tenderness you offered, and the way they handled it like it was optional. They face the truth that you were real with them, and they were half present with you. Avoidance can look like peace on the outside, but on the inside, it is pressure. It is a nervous system that has learned to escape instead of repair. It is a heart that would rather run than risk being held accountable. It is a mind that says, if I stay, I'll have to explain. If I explain, I'll have to admit. If I admit, I'll have to feel. And feeling is the one place I don't know how to survive. So they disappear, they go quiet, they act cold, they delay, they deflect, they turn serious conversations into jokes, they change the topic, they leave you on read, they make plans and cancel. They say, I'm busy, I'm tired, I don't know, I can't do this right now. And every time they do it, your heart tries harder, because you think love means effort. Love means patience. Love means proving you're safe. You start over-giving. You start over-explaining. You start making your needs smaller so they feel less overwhelmed. You start becoming the calm one, the understanding one, the one who swallows the ache and smiles anyway. But that is not love. That is you carrying the relationship while they carry the exit. And here is the part you need to understand, the part that will free you. Their silence is not your verdict. It is their sentence, not because you want them to suffer, not because you want revenge, but because silence does something to a human being who knows they hurt someone who loved them. Silence gives them no relief. Silence doesn't erase what happened. Silence might hide it from the world, but it doesn't hide it from their own quiet moments. When distractions stop, when the day gets still, when they're alone with their thoughts, shame walks in. Shame is not always dramatic. Shame is often quiet. Shame is the tight chest when they almost reach out, and then they don't. Shame is the stomach drop when your name appears somewhere, and they look away. Shame is the sudden need to stay busy, to scroll, to drink, to work, to flirt, to run, to fill the air with anything except reflection. Shame is the voice inside them that says, you were loved, and you mishandled it. Shame is the awareness that you saw them clearly, and they still chose comfort over courage. And I need you to hear this with your whole body. You do not have to chase someone into emotional responsibility. You do not have to beg someone to face you. You do not have to send one more paragraph to be understood. You do not have to shrink your feelings to make someone less afraid of them. The fact that they can't face you is not proof that you were unlovable. It is proof that you were real, and real love requires real presence. So if you are sitting there right now, with that ache in your throat, with that heaviness behind your eyes, with that question looping in your mind, why won't they just talk to me? I want you to change the question. Ask a better question. Ask the question that gives you your power back. Not, why won't they face me? But why am I begging to be faced? Because the moment you stop chasing their eye contact, you start reclaiming your self-respect. The moment you stop trying to convince them to communicate, you start communicating to yourself, I matter. The moment you stop waiting for their apology, you start giving yourself closure. And closure is not something they hand you. Closure is something you choose. You choose it when you stop checking your phone like your worth is about to arrive in a notification. You choose it when you stop rereading old messages like they are proof you were loved properly. You choose it when you stop using your empathy as a reason to tolerate inconsistency. You choose it when you say, I can love someone and still walk away from what hurts me. I can miss them and still protect myself. I can grieve what I wanted and still refuse what I was given. And let me be honest, this is not easy. Your heart will want to run back to the familiar pain because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Your mind will romanticize the good moments because it wants relief. Your body will crave the dopamine of contact because disconnection feels like withdrawal. And in those moments, you have to be stronger than the urge. You have to be kinder to yourself than your desperation. You don't need to punish them. You don't need to post for them. You don't need to prove you're fine. You don't need to win. You just need to heal. And healing looks like this. You stop offering access to someone who refuses accountability. You stop volunteering your softness to someone who only appreciates it when you're leaving. You stop calling it love when it costs you your dignity. Because the truth is, the person who can't face you anymore is living with the echo of what they did. They may never say it out loud. They may never admit they were wrong. They may never give you the satisfying apology you deserve. But life has a way of making people feel what they refused to face. Not through punishment, but through emptiness. Through the quiet realization that something real left, and it didn't come back. And that is why you must stop standing at the door of someone else's emotional house, knocking, begging, hoping they let you in. Turn around. Walk back to yourself. Walk back to the part of you that has been waiting for you to choose it. Walk back to your own life, your own peace, your own future. You are not here to be a lesson that breaks you. You are here to be a love that builds you. You are not here to carry someone's shame on your back. You are here to carry your own worth in your hands, gently, firmly, like something sacred. So breathe, wipe your tears if you need to, and say it with me. I will not abandon myself to keep someone else comfortable. I will not chase someone who runs. I will not beg someone to face me. I will face myself. I will honor myself. I will heal, even if my heart shakes while I do it. Shame is heavy, not because it screams, but because it sinks. It doesn't always show up as tears or a dramatic breakdown. It often shows up as distance, as silence, as a person who suddenly can't talk, can't deal, can't handle it right now. And when you're the one on the other side of that wall, you feel the coldness like a verdict. You feel the quiet like rejection. You feel their disappearance like proof that you were never important. But I need you to hear the truth, because the truth is what will stop you from bleeding in the dark. Shame is loud on the inside, even when they look fine on the outside. Someone can smile, someone can post, someone can act busy, someone can flirt, someone can pretend they're unbothered, and still be fighting a war in their chest the moment they're alone. Shame is the moment the room gets quiet, and their mind replays what they did, what they didn't do, what they promised, what they broke. Shame is the awareness that they hurt a person who didn't deserve it, and instead of repairing it like an adult, they chose the easiest escape, avoidance. And what makes shame so powerful is that it doesn't just say, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am the mistake. So if you've been waiting for them to come back and explain everything clearly, if you've been waiting for that message that finally says, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, you mattered," you need to understand why it might never come. Because to say those words, they would have to face not only your pain, but their identity. They would have to sit in the discomfort of accountability. They would have to admit they handled love with fear. They would have to look at themselves without the mask. And for someone who has lived by running, facing reality can feel like drowning. So they do what they've always done. They protect their ego. They protect their image. They protect their nervous system. And they abandon the one thing that could actually heal them: honesty. They will avoid your eyes because eyes tell the truth. They will avoid your voice because your voice carries memory. They will avoid your presence because your presence reminds them of who they were when they were loved. And that is the part that breaks you, because you still remember the version of them that was soft, the version of them that held your hand, the version of them that almost tried. You keep thinking, where did that person go? And why did they leave me with all the feelings? But the person didn't disappear. The courage did. The maturity did. The willingness to be seen did. And here's what I want you to stop doing. Stop translating their shame into your value. Stop reading their silence as you didn't matter. Stop making their avoidance mean you were too intense, too emotional, too needy, too human. Because you know what shame often means. It means they know you mattered. It means they know they failed you. It means they know they crossed a line. And instead of owning it, they hid from it. And listen, I'm not saying this to make you sit there and feel satisfied that they're suffering. That's not healing. That's just pain-wearing makeup. I'm saying it because you've been carrying pain that isn't yours. You've been trying to fix a wound that they caused, and then they left you to clean up alone. You've been trying to understand a person who refuses to understand themselves. You've been trying to get closure from someone whose entire coping style is to avoid closure. So let me give you the truth that will bring your nervous system back down to earth. Their shame is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your burden. Their inability to face what they did is not your cue to chase harder. Because chasing someone who is drowning in shame does not pull them out, it pulls you under. And if you've been the kind of person who loves deeply, you're dangerous to yourself in moments like this, because your empathy makes you excuse behavior that would break another person's spirit. You'll say, they're scared, they're wounded, they don't know how to love, they're overwhelmed, and you'll keep offering softness like it's a solution. But softness does not heal someone who refuses accountability. Softness does not fix someone who chooses distance over repair. Softness becomes self-betrayal when you hand it to someone who uses it to stay comfortable while you stay hurting. So I want you to take your power back in a quiet way, in a sacred way, in a way that doesn't require them to change at all. The next time you feel that urge to reach out, to ask, to explain, to remind them of your worth, pause, put your hand on your chest and tell yourself, I don't need to be witnessed by someone who refuses to look. I don't need to be validated by someone who can't validate themselves. I don't need to keep reopening my wound just to prove I'm bleeding. Because what you really want is not them. What you really want is peace. What you really want is clarity. What you really want is to feel safe in love. And that safety will never come from someone who uses silence as a shield. And yes, it hurts, because your heart is honest. Your heart keeps showing up even when it's tired. Your heart wants to believe that love can change someone. But love doesn't change someone who won't face the truth. Love can invite growth, but it cannot drag a person into it. Growth requires courage, and courage is the thing avoidance avoids the most. So if they're gone, if they're quiet, if they can't face you, Don't stand there begging for eye contact from someone who is afraid of their own reflection. Turn that gaze back to yourself. Face the part of you that has been waiting for you to choose it. Face the truth that you deserved directness. You deserved emotional presence. You deserved repair. You deserved a person who could sit in discomfort and still stay. Shame might be their silent punishment, but your healing will be your loud liberation. Your healing will be the moment you stop taking their behavior personally and start taking your life seriously. Your healing will be the moment you stop asking, "Why can't they face me?" and you start saying, "I will never again beg to be faced." And one day, when the noise of your pain settles, you will realize something that will make you breathe again. You didn't lose your worth. You lost someone's capacity. You didn't lose love. You lost access to a person who didn't know how to hold it. And that is not a tragedy. That is a release. So let them carry what they refuse to repair. Let them sit with the silence they created. Let them feel what they avoided. And you keep moving forward, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Not with revenge, but with self-respect. Not with the need to be chosen, but with the decision to choose yourself. You have been waiting for something that feels like oxygen. One message, one explanation, one honest sentence that makes the pain make sense. You have been sitting with unanswered questions like they are a weight on your chest, and some days you can breathe, and some days you can't. Because when someone disappears without clarity, your mind tries to build its own story, and most of the time, that story blames you. It says you were too emotional, too available, too invested, too hopeful, and it turns your love into a crime you keep apologizing for. But listen to me. You don't need their confession to get your closure. You don't need their apology to start healing. You don't need them to admit the truth for the truth to be real. Closure is not a conversation. Closure is a decision. Closure is the moment you stop handing someone the power to define your peace. Closure is the moment you stop begging a person for words they don't have the courage to speak. Closure is the moment you stop reopening your wound to see if they finally care. Because every time you go back for answers from someone who avoids responsibility, you are asking the same person who hurt you to become the person who heals you, and that is a trap. I know you want them to say it. I know you want to hear, "I'm sorry." I know you want to hear, "You mattered to me." I know you want to hear, "I was wrong." I know you want the truth spoken out loud, because it feels like then you can finally put it down. But some people will never give you that, not because you didn't deserve it, but because they can't face what it would mean about them. They would rather protect their ego than honor your heart. They would rather stay unclear than be accountable. They would rather make you doubt yourself than admit they failed you. And that is why waiting for their closure keeps you stuck, because you are waiting on someone who benefits from your confusion, not always intentionally, but functionally. When you don't have answers, you keep the door open. When you don't have clarity, you keep hoping. When you keep hoping, you keep reaching. And when you keep reaching, you keep giving them access to your energy, your attention, your softness, even from a distance. So I want you to understand something that will hurt a little at first, but then it will set you free. The truth you need is already in what happened, not in what they will say. Their actions already answered you. Their patterns already spoke. Their silence already communicated. Their inability to show up with honesty already told you everything you need to know about what they were capable of giving. And I know how your heart fights that, because your heart says, "But they had good moments." Your heart says, "But they cared sometimes." Your heart says, "But they were sweet at the beginning." Your heart says, but they looked at me like I was home. And that's what makes this kind of loss so brutal. It's not that there was nothing. It's that there wasn't enough. It's that the love came in waves, and you kept living in the gap between them, trying to earn the next wave. But closure is when you stop negotiating for basic respect. Closure is when you stop needing them to validate what you lived through. Closure is when you stop asking, "Did I matter?" And you start saying, "I mattered to myself, and that is the only thing I can control." And I need you to hear me clearly, because you might be confusing closure with revenge. You might be thinking, if I don't get an apology, they win. If I don't get the last word, they get away with it. If I don't make them understand, they'll never feel what I felt. But healing is not about making them feel it. Healing is about refusing to keep feeling it. You don't heal by dragging someone into a discussion they refuse to have. You heal by deciding that your nervous system deserves peace more than your ego deserves answers. You heal by deciding that you will not keep reliving the same pain just to get a different ending. You heal by accepting that someone's inability to love you properly is not your job to fix and not your fault to carry. So what does it look like to choose closure? It looks like you stop checking their social media, like it holds the missing piece. It looks like you stop rereading old messages, like they are evidence that the future will be different. It looks like you stop writing speeches in your head that you'll never get to deliver. It looks like you stop rehearsing how you'll respond if they come back, because that rehearsal keeps the door cracked open, and your heart keeps bleeding through the crack. Closure looks like boundaries that you honor even when you're lonely. Closure looks like you letting yourself cry without reaching for them afterward. Closure looks like you grieving the fantasy, not just the person. Because sometimes, what hurts most is not who they were. It's who you believed they could become with you. And I want to say something gently but firmly. If they truly had the capacity to give you the kind of love you are begging for, you would not be begging. If they truly had the emotional maturity to repair, you would not be sitting in this confusion. If they truly valued you the way your heart hoped they did, they would not leave you carrying the weight of the relationship alone. So let this be your closure. The clarity is in the pattern. The clarity is in the inconsistency. The clarity is in the avoidance. The clarity is in the way you had to keep explaining what should have been obvious, the way you had to keep asking for basic care, the way you had to keep swallowing your needs so they could stay comfortable. And now, this is where you take your life back. You stop asking for closure from someone who is committed to being unclear. You stop pleading for a conversation from someone who runs from emotional responsibility. You stop handing your peace to a person who has already shown you they will drop it. You give yourself the apology you never got. You say, "I'm sorry I stayed in a place that made me question my worth. I'm sorry I over-explained to someone who wasn't listening. I'm sorry I abandoned myself trying to hold on to you." And then you forgive yourself, because you loved with the best you had, and you were hoping for a love that could meet you there. And one day, you will wake up and feel it, that quiet shift inside you. The need to know will be smaller. The urge to check will be weaker. The ache will still exist, but it won't control you. And that is how you'll know you found real closure, not because they finally spoke, but because you finally stopped needing them to. You will realize you are allowed to close the chapter without their permission. You are allowed to walk away without a final explanation. You are allowed to stop waiting for someone to become who they refuse to be. Closure is you choosing you and meaning it. You keep holding on to the version of them that showed up in the beginning, the version that looked into your eyes a little longer, the version that listened, the version that laughed, the version that made you feel chosen, the version that felt warm enough to trust. And because you felt that warmth, even briefly, Your heart keeps insisting it must still be in there somewhere. Your heart keeps reaching for the person you glimpsed, the person you almost had, the person they promised they could be. But I need you to tell yourself the truth, with love and with courage. Stop chasing the version of them that only shows up when they're scared of losing you. Because that version is not a partner. That version is a performance. That version appears when you pull back, when you get quiet, when you finally look like you might leave. Suddenly they can text. Suddenly they can call. Suddenly they can say the right words. Suddenly they can be soft. Suddenly they can be romantic. Suddenly they can remember your value. And your heart lights up because you think, there they are. This is who they really are. It's finally happening. But it's not finally happening. It's finally panicking. And I know that hurts because you don't want to believe someone could be that inconsistent. You don't want to believe that the person who held you could also be the person who leaves you emotionally starving. You don't want to believe that love could be offered like a sip of water, just enough to keep you alive, never enough to fully quench you. But look at the pattern, because the pattern is the truth. They show up when they feel you slipping away, not when you're crying in their arms. They show up when their control is threatened, not when your heart is threatened. They show up when they fear abandonment, not when you need reassurance. And that is not love that is safe. That is love that is reactive. You keep thinking your job is to be patient, to be understanding, to be the one who proves love is safe. And yes, empathy is beautiful, but empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Because while you're trying to be the calm one, the mature one, the forgiving one, you are slowly teaching your nervous system that love means anxiety. Love means waiting. Love means guessing. Love means earning the bare minimum. And I want you to understand something, because it's going to change the way you see everything. If someone only treats you well when they're about to lose you, they are not loving you. They are managing you. They are responding to fear, not responding to your needs. They are not building a relationship. They are putting out fires, just enough to keep you from walking away. And you deserve more than a person who becomes kind only when consequences arrive. You deserve consistency. You deserve a love that doesn't need a threat to become present. You deserve someone who doesn't wait until you're emotionally exhausted to take you seriously. You deserve someone who communicates before you break, not after you've already been shattered. But here's what happens to people like you. People who love deeply. People who see the best in others. You start confusing potential with reality. You start saying, but they could change, but they have trauma, but they didn't mean it, but they're trying. And you keep giving chances. You keep giving softness. You keep giving time. And you don't realize that you're spending your life waiting for someone to become a person they are not choosing to be. And that is why this hurts so much, because it's not just the relationship, it's the hope. It's the hope you invested, the future you pictured, the version of them you built in your mind, the version of you that kept believing if you loved harder, it would finally become stable. But love does not become stable because you love harder. Love becomes stable because two people choose stability. So I want you to do something that is going to feel unfamiliar, but it will save you. I want you to stop measuring love by intensity. Stop measuring love by how much you miss them. Stop measuring love by those rare moments they finally show up and say the right thing. Measure love by what happens on ordinary days. Measure love by who they are when nothing is on fire. Measure love by how they treat you when you're not leaving, when you're not silent, when you're not pulling away. Because real love doesn't require you to disappear to be valued. Real love doesn't punish you with distance. Real love doesn't make you compete with their fear. And if you're honest, the version of them you keep chasing is not the version you lived with most of the time. Most of the time, you lived with confusion. Most of the time, you lived with delayed responses, mixed signals, emotional unavailability, excuses, coldness, and that lonely feeling of having someone, but not really having them. You lived with the feeling that you had to perform to keep them close. You had to be easy. You had to be low maintenance. You had to swallow your needs. That is not the relationship your heart was built for. And I know you want to say, but I love them. I know you do. But love is not a reason to abandon yourself. Love is not a reason to accept crumbs. Love is not a reason to keep getting hurt by the same pattern and calling it patience. Let me say it straight. The version of them that shows up only when you're leaving is the version that's trying to prevent loss, not create safety. And you cannot build a life on somebody's fear. You cannot build a relationship on somebody's panic. You cannot build a future on somebody's temporary effort. Because temporary effort always ends, and then you're right back where you started, questioning yourself, doubting yourself, begging for basic presence. So what do? You turn your attention back to the person who has been waiting for you to choose them. You. You choose the version of you that doesn't beg. You choose the version of you that doesn't chase. You choose the version of you that believes love should feel steady, not like a roller coaster. You stop rewarding inconsistency with access to your heart. You stop rewarding hot and cold behavior with forgiveness that costs you your dignity. You stop answering the nice version of them with your whole soul, when the real version of them keeps abandoning you. And yes, this will hurt, because it means letting go of the fantasy. It means grieving the person you thought they would become. It means accepting that the love you wanted may not be possible with them. But that grief is honest, and honest grief heals. What doesn't heal is staying in a cycle that keeps reopening the same wound. So if you need a sentence to hold on to when your heart gets weak, hold on to this. I will not chase a version of someone that only appears when I'm about to leave. I will choose the love that chooses me daily. I will choose the peace that doesn't make me beg to be treated right. I will choose myself, even when it's hard, even when my heart still misses them, even when my hands shake. Because the moment you stop chasing, your life starts coming back to you. The most powerful thing that happens in this story is not when they finally realize what they did. It's not when they come back with regret. It's not when they break down and confess. The most powerful thing is when you wake up one day and you can feel it, the shift. You're still tender. You're still human. You still remember, but you are no longer available for the same pain. Your healing is the power shift, because for a long time, your power was stuck and waiting for a message, waiting for clarity, waiting for them to choose you fully, waiting for them to be consistent, waiting for them to stop running, waiting for them to finally love you the way you loved them. And the longer you waited, the more you lost pieces of yourself, little pieces, like crumbs falling out of your hands, until one day you looked in the mirror and realized you were tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. That kind of tiredness comes from emotional begging. It comes from explaining your needs over and over to someone who keeps hearing you but not changing. It comes from shrinking your heart to fit inside someone else's comfort. It comes from loving someone who keeps your nervous system on edge because you never know what version of them is going to show up. The warm one or the cold one, the present one or the distant one. And if you're being honest, you have been living in survival mode, calling it love. So let's talk about healing, not as a cute word, not as a slogan, not as something you post about. Healing as a decision that costs you something. Healing as a choice you make when your heart is still attached. Healing as the moment you stop chasing what keeps hurting you, even if it means sitting in the silence you've been avoiding. Because here's the truth. The power shift happens when you stop trying to make them understand, and you start understanding yourself. You start noticing how your body feels around inconsistency. You start recognizing how your anxiety spikes when they go quiet. You start admitting that you've been living off crumbs. You start telling yourself the truth. I don't feel safe here. I don't feel secure here. I don't feel emotionally held here. And instead of arguing with that truth, you honor it. That's healing. Healing is when you stop romanticizing potential and start respecting reality. Healing is when you stop giving someone the benefit of the doubt at the cost of your dignity. Healing is when you stop saying, they're just scared, and start saying, scared people can still hurt you, and you don't have to stay. And this is where the power shift becomes real. You stop making your life about being chosen. You stop making your mood depend on their attention. You stop handing your self-worth to someone who handles it carelessly. You stop checking your phone like it's a heartbeat. You stop letting one message decide whether you feel okay today. You become your own stability. And I know there's a part of you that still wants them to feel it. There's a part of you that wants them to regret. There's a part of you that wants them to realize they lost something rare. That part of you is not evil. That part of you is wounded. That part of you wants justice because you gave love and got confusion. You gave softness and got distance. You gave loyalty and got inconsistency. But I need you to understand something. The most devastating thing you can do to an avoidant is not to yell, not to beg, not to chase, not to prove, not to plead. The most devastating thing is to become unavailable to the cycle, to step out of the pattern so fully that your energy no longer responds to their push and pull. Because when you heal, you stop reacting. And when you stop reacting, they feel something they can't control. They feel the absence of your emotional labor. They feel the silence that used to be filled by your explanations. They feel the distance that used to be bridged by your forgiveness. They feel what it's like when you're no longer the person holding the thread of connection by yourself. That is the power shift, and it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small choices, one boundary at a time. It happens when you don't send the message you wanted to send. It happens when you let the urge pass. It happens when you cry and still don't reach out. It happens when you unfollow, when you mute, when you stop checking. It happens when you choose your future over your fixation. Healing is not about hating them. It's about refusing to hate yourself. It's about refusing to keep reopening the same wound just to see if they finally care. It's about refusing to keep living in emotional suspense. It's about refusing to keep making excuses for behavior that breaks your spirit. It's about returning to yourself, again and again, until your nervous system finally believes you are safe with you. And you will feel it. You will feel the moment your standards rise, the moment you stop wanting a text and start wanting consistency, the moment you stop wanting attention and start wanting emotional maturity, the moment you stop wanting them to miss you and start wanting to respect yourself. And when that happens, you become impossible to manipulate because you are no longer driven by the fear of losing them. You become driven by the fear of losing yourself again. That is a different kind of strength. So if you're still in the middle of it, if you still feel the pull, if you still have days where you miss them so much it hurts, I want you to hold on to this. Missing them does not mean you should return. Loving them does not mean you should tolerate. Remembering them does not mean you should reopen the door. You can love someone and still choose yourself. You can grieve someone and still protect your peace. You can be soft and still be firm. You can be emotional and still be wise, because healing is not becoming cold. Healing is becoming clear. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about what you will no longer accept. Clear about what love should feel like in your body. Steady, safe, mutual, honest. And if they come back someday, if they try to reopen the door, you will not be the same person who used to fold. You will not be the same person who used to chase. You will not be the same person who used to beg for basic presents. You will be the person who finally learned that your heart is not a place for confusion to live. So let your healing be loud, not in words, but in choices. Let your healing be your boundary. Let your healing be your silence. Let your healing be your peace. Let your healing be the power shift that changes everything. Not for them, but for you.